What is up, everybody? It's Mark from 403 Fauna, along with
Jason Radass Designs.
welcome to the Fauna Topic, where every week we talk about relevant topics of the ball python industry. Now, today we're going to talk about feeding. I know we mentioned like every episode a little bit about feeding, and I always say, hey, let's save that for a future episode. Well, the future is now, and we're going to talk
hmm
about feeding ball pythons. Let me share our topic for today. So, feeding, everything feeding, frozen, thawed, live, type of prey, etc., etc. I know I've got my method of feeding falls a little bit out of the norm of the usual for people with ball pythons, and we'll talk about yours as well. But let's get a check in right now. How was your week so far?
Pretty good, yeah. Just still waiting on that one pastel het clown to lay eggs, and I just checked on her just now, and no eggs yet. But I did clean a whole bunch of tubs today, and I'm not done yet, but the whole Freedom Breeder is almost all the way cleaned and sanitized and refreshed with new cocoa. I got another block out there in the sun right now, soaking. It's pretty much ready, and I could tell when I pulled some snakes out that well, they're a little chunkier and they haven't been eating that much, so that's a good sign. I got a new snake,
Ooh,
and I will yeah, somebody sent me a snake finally. I paid them in the beginning of winter when we couldn't quite ship, and I just have been waiting all this time, and it's fine, and he's here. And I'll show him for the snake of the week.
cool. Yeah, I picked up a snake this week too. We'll talk about it more when we get to the Morph Market auction section because I won it on an auction. I,
Nice.
prior to us going live, you mentioned that you use cypress mulch. Is that did I hear that right?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you
Yeah, I
get
mean,
that in
I
California?
really like it. I use like back in the day, like decades ago, literally decades ago, forest floor. It was a cypress mulch substrate. It almost has like it used to have like a tiny bit of sand almost in it and different things. It's uh a little bit harder to get cypress mulch. Like if you want to buy it in bulk quantity, it's expensive to get it out of the pet trade. And to get it from like say a landscaping business or something along those lines, like it's hard to find it. I think it's like easier to get on the East Coast.
Yeah, it is.
But on the West Coast, someone has to order pallets and pallets and pallets of it for, like, say, landscaping, like a nursery or something. And there's so many other things to use nowadays that are more cost effective, different types of bark and different things that it's pretty hard to get on the West Coast. Like
Okay.
there are
Yeah.
people that have found some, but it's pretty hard to get. So I just go with forest floor and I use it intermittently with in between cocoa and different things and it's a little costly. I get like a 24 quart bag for like 20 bucks and that'll do like a whole bunch of juvenile and baby cages or it'll do like three adult ball python like 70 tubs and I'll mist it a little bit. And I've always found that it doesn't mold very easy. I think decades ago I had it maybe mold once, and I don't know if that was just like a really old bag and I kept it really wet or what, but it essentially doesn't mold um like some cocoa brands will. And and I just like it. And there's some people that feel that cypress mulch is like more chokeable that snakes get it in their mouth easier and it's a little bit sharper. Um, I guess I've had snakes over the years of using it on and off, ingest little pieces of it and never had any deaths or problems or anything. Every once in a while, we'll have to like help a snake get some out of its mouth or something. So there is that. If you keep it a little bit moist, and again, like that's easier to do with the resistance to molding. There's it's less. I find it to be less likely for them to get it stuck in their mouth. So some people feel differently, and some people have like a line on getting a good value on it. So some people use that, and some people just don't or don't like it and won't.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
I've been seeing a lot of people using that, but it's always been mentioned how hard it is to get on the West Coast. And yeah,
yeah,
you mentioned, I was like, does he got a plug for that? But I guess not. But making
yeah.
it, I made a transition from paper to cocoa a couple of years ago, and I remember I had that initial fear of, oh my gosh, is it gonna potentially ingest a substrate? But like you mentioned, maybe occasionally they'll get something stuck in the mouth, but it hasn't been an issue for me.
Yeah.
Well,
I
the rest,
I tried some Repta baby chip a while back, and initially I liked it. It's like really small chunks of cocoa. And at first, for some reason, I liked it. And then I felt like it stayed a little too moist. And then I noticed they were getting it in their mouths more often. So I went from liking it initially to I won't use it again. But it depends on what you're keeping. For certain animals, that will look good on the top of the substrate, and but for ball pythons, I just feel like that one doesn't work. Some people will worry about big chunks getting ingested by snakes, and that's not good because it's not you can't they can't really digest it, and it can get impactions and things. But luckily, I've never had that happen. Um, yeah.
for me this week, I do have my red stripe girl. She's scheduled to lay towards the end of May, but I've noticed I just still look on her every day. I've noticed that prior to laying, they'll maybe shrink a little bit, and
Hmm.
you wonder to yourself, "Oh my gosh, did she reabsorb her eggs?" But they can't do that after ovulation, and it's just that waiting game. You wait like a month just for to get those eggs, and you got to wait 2 months for those eggs to hatch. So that's my first clutch I'm waiting on this season. A lot of my girls are like super thick, and I think two of them are on the verge of ovulation. This is I'm at the point where I think about this. It would be really nice if I had an ultrasound, but honestly, for me, I would love to have one, but I think it would just sit with me. I would rarely use it. Maybe like occasions like this when I'm just kind of wondering, do, is an ultrasound in your future?
You're cutting out a little bit there. You're
Uh,
like Max Headroom.
my bad.
Um,
I was asking, is an ultrasound in your future? Did you hear that?
would you say ultrasound?
Ultrasound, yeah.
Yeah, my cousin bought out someone's collection and they had gotten an ultrasound, and I should have bought it from them because they sold it for like $400 and then got like pretty much most of their money back from buying everything from them. And yeah, I'm old school, just palpating and just waiting. And sometimes that includes some wondering. But if
Yeah.
you're really good at it and you time it really well, like certain snakes, like say you breed them year after year, and you've had them for a long time, and you take really good care of them, they're super healthy, and they're just really good breeders. Like you'll be able to more easily, like get used to palpating, and you just pretty much let the snake run through naturally through your hands, and it's just like holding like a trigger on a gun. You can feel the lumps. Some people can do it really well with boas. Some people can do it well with king snakes. Some people can do it well with, um, ball pythons even. And I haven't gotten it all the way down, although I have felt some snakes. It was pretty clear that you could feel little follicles in there. But some people get so good at it that they can tell you, like say how many rosy boas that a snake is gonna have, or how many eggs a ball python is gonna lay. And um I didn't really do that today in examining snakes, but there were some snakes that were extra chunky. Um,
Yeah.
so we'll see. I'll probably next Friday, I'll go through and get ready to feed everybody again and like palpate all the snakes that I'm wondering about.
Cool. I got a snake coming this week. I'm gonna put out a video this weekend, so stay tuned for that. And we'll also get a just a look at some of the females in my collection, like you mentioned. Some of them are really chunky. Have you noticed the
Mhm.
glow with any of your girls yet?
Not really, not really. There's one snake that seemed to be glowing a little bit, um, but it's gone away. Um, so and that was she shed after that. So they say like the glow is like pretty much right before they lay eggs, right?
Yeah.
It's like after that pre-egg laying shed, they'll tend to glow. But no, I haven't really noticed that too much. Um, I've always noticed though that with reptiles, and some fire up and fire down, and some have the ability to change colors like chameleons,
Mhm.
and some have iridescence and different things, where they change color when they thermoregulate. But yeah, I feel like with any reptile you have, there will be times where it's just prettier. Um, I've been seeing a lot of like blue belly lizards, like western
Mhm.
fence lizards out in the wild. They're all out there doing their push-ups and stuff,
Yeah.
and some of them are like super blue.
Yeah. They're gorgeous. We'll
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about the color thing because ASF users swear that it colors up their snakes. I'm not sure about that. But we'll talk
Mm-hmm.
about that in a little bit. Okay. Now, every week we do a shout out of the week for the winner of our problem of the week. And last week's winner was Goff's Reptile Creations. So, congratulations on getting the answer correct on last week's question. Be sure to check him out on Instagram. Do you follow Goff Reptile
Yeah,
Creations?
he was in the Proper Royals Patreon. So he
Okay.
has a snake of mine, and it looks like he has a new logo too. I don't know if he moved to Egypt or what. He's got like a mummy there. It's looking pretty. Like that'll be really nice come Halloween time.
Very cool
Yeah,
logo.
pretty cool. Casey, he's a nice guy, and I've seen him share a couple videos, I think, somewhere on Instagram, and we've talked a little bit about maybe loaning males or doing trades or different stuff. He's a nice guy. He's building a collection over time, and he has like some set directions, like some things that he wants to do. So he'll create some really cool stuff over time.
Well, let's get to our question of the week. We only have 5 people in the audience right now. It's not as controversial as last week's subject. So we had like 20
Hmm,
at this point last week.
hmm.
But
Yeah,
so
it's
easier
okay.
chance for you guys to win. I think Jason from Genomic won before. I think did Straight Blast win one? I got to check back on my
Mm-hmm.
list. But
Yeah,
less
yeah, he did.
less people in the audience means a greater chance at winning here. So let's bring up our question of the week. So, what idea did Dave Kaufman support in his Ball Python movie? So, you've of course had to have seen this movie, but you can take a guess too.
Mm-hmm.
Audience out there listening, guess. First one who gets it correct will get a shout out of the week next week and be eligible for a free snake from myself and Jason. So, A, ball pythons are arboreal, meaning that they live in trees or are tree specific. B, ASFs are not natural prey for ball pythons. C, ball pythons are free roaming the majority of their life. Or D, ball python populations are healthy in the wild. Did you see the Dave Kaufman ball python movie, Jason?
I did. I watched it right away, and I think I watched it twice, and then I watched bits of it a little bit more. And it was interesting. At one point, he goes into like a restaurant, and they're like serving like Savannah monitor stew,
Yeah.
and I was just like, I'll try new stuff and different stuff. I used to live close enough to San Francisco to just drive there whenever I want, and I'll go into like little like Chinatown type places and just like eat different things that it's just fun to mix it up and try new stuff. But Savannah monitor stew with a
Yeah.
little chubby tail coming out of it, I would not eat. It just didn't look appealing, and it was just off-putting on just the idea of it. And my first reptile ever was a green iguana. I love that iguana. And um, there's places in the world that eat green iguanas. It's just like no big deal to them. And at the time, I thought that I wouldn't try it, but I think I could try that now. Like I could see myself. There's like some sort of chance of doing that. But Savannah Monitor Stew just looked horrible in that movie.
Yeah, I remember seeing that little piece of tail. I was like, nah, I don't think I'll try that.
Yeah,
these
it
these
just looked
questions
it looked
here,
like I'd get sick if I ate that.
yeah. So these questions here, he kind of covered all these on his show, but I just switched them around, and one of them's the correct one. And Sean got it. Hey, Sean, you get a shout out
Yeah.
next week, and you are eligible for a free ball python. If you could you message me on Instagram and just let me know, and I'll give you a shout out and make you eligible. But his, I found he seemed to be on this that ASFs were not natural prey. Did you notice that on that movie?
Yeah, he spent a lot of money and he jumped through a lot of hoops. And I have respect for Dave Kaufman to be regular on the reptile show circuit and to pour in a lot of passion and energy and time in his life into reptile keeping and reptiles in the wild and education. And um, he's a little bit goofy and funny. I appreciate that a bit. The movie, I felt like, it's easy for people to watch somebody's documentary or movie and like critique it or like, whatnot. I just felt like there's some things that I would have done different or would have done in more depth. And editing a documentary just essentially is what it was, more so than a movie, in my opinion. But like, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. He put in a lot of effort into it, and I appreciated viewing it. But yeah, no, some things should have gone in a little bit more depth, a little bit more research. Like you can't just go there for like a week or two and ask some locals and think that that's going to be the most accurate information. There's all sorts of different places that ball pythons range in Africa, and there's all sorts of locals and all sorts of stories and all sorts of people to talk to. And um, I just feel like he spoke with an individual, and that individual felt like they didn't recognize that as being a regular prey item or creature out in the fields out there. And there's, to my understanding, seven like subspecies of the multimammoth mice.
Mhm.
Like this rodent has cousins, and they're all very similar. And some, are going to vary in size a little bit. Some are going to vary in how many nipples that they have. So
Mhm.
some of them have like a great deal of them. I even read one report, someone said 16. I read something somebody had stated really reliable. Some of them have 12, but that's where they get their name from, is from that. They can have big litters and they're able to feed them. And so they range all the way down into like South Africa and up to Africa. Like it's not really debatable whether um, African soft furs and the variety of their subspecies are available to ball pythons in the wild. It's basically fact. It's like there's a geographic range that it's known where they're at, and I'm sure there's all sorts of other types of little mammals and rodents that also live alongside them. So ball pythons could eat them. Ball pythons could eat birds, um, different things. So yeah, I didn't really agree with that, but also the different subspecies of soft furs will some of them will look a little bit different. So just because one has like, kind of more party colors and saddles and different things, like another cousin of it could just be all tan or all brown. And in captivity now with this one in particular variety of soft furs, like some people are getting black furred ones and ones with black tails. So yeah, yeah, I didn't like really buy that at all, just from the comment of the one guy who was not used to
Yeah.
seeing them.
I mean, it was his movie. I watched it. I enjoyed it, but it definitely seemed like he had an agenda on some of those points.
Yeah,
Well, let's get to our rat ass snake of the week. Let's check out that new
yeah,
snake you got, Jason.
sure, let's do that.
So Jason picked up a new snake this week. He's going to share it with us. Feel free to guess at what the genes are in the chat. Well, it's definitely pied.
It definitely is.
Okay,
And
usually with that stripe. Go ahead.
I have a few pieds, but this is the only male pied ball python that I've ever gotten. So I've come close to some on trades, I've come close to buying some, and there is no yellow belly in this guy. So it's
Uh,
other things that are in him that are making it look kind of like it might have yellow belly.
that's what I would have guessed too.
Yeah,
How about
no
leopard?
yellow, no leopard,
Okay. Orange Dream was one of the guesses. Any OD in there?
no OD, although he has a bit of orange, and when he was younger, there was like a little bit more, and his siblings like they have some orange to them for sure.
How about yellow belly complex of some sort?
No yellow belly complex. So what is making him look like what's going on is Gene X, which
Ah,
came from Justin Kabilka from his collection.
I see.
And this guy's mom was Gene X, and this guy's dad also had Gene X.
I don't.
And what's that?
I don't know if you saw a comment Justin made on one of his videos or something on Instagram, but he mentioned that he doesn't even label his Gene X anymore because it was just kind of hard for him to tell. Did you see that?
No,
No.
no, but from looking at a variety of pictures of Gene X animals, there's a little subtle thing that you can tell from them.
Mm.
They get like this speckling, they get this like peachiness, they get a tinge of like orange. It does a little bit of jumbling up, and um, it is hard to tell, but you can pick it out of some animals, and it does things. It does subtle little things. So you mix it with different stuff, you're gonna have some interesting things happen. You're not gonna hatch like boring pies. You're gonna have some stuff going on. And I think it's good to mix that up in there a little bit. And this guy is also mahogany, even
Ooh.
though his head could be a little bit more chocolatey and brown than it is, but looking at his siblings and everything, and then like on the side right there, see how it gets like that, I don't know, like that muddiness,
Yeah,
that tan kind of thing. That's mahogany doing that patterning and that um coloring.
that's cool. Did you catch Justin's video today?
No, no, I didn't. I had to go pick up rodents today, and a local guy. I moved out of town, and so I'm coming to take care of the snakes every Friday. And a local guy that I used to get rodents from, I pre-arranged to meet him. He's really cool. He's gonna have a baby in a few days, and he breeds rodents. He used to have snakes. I bought some of the last snakes that he had. He got out of snakes to just focus on breeding rats, solely
Ooh.
just like Norwegian rats, and makes a pretty good side hustle from doing it. And he's just a really charming guy, and he gives me a better deal than anyone else would. I've talked to a couple other people just to try some other people to have other options to get live in case he was busy or whatnot. Sometimes he has huge orders. And those people all tended to be pretty flaky. So I just went back to him. And yeah, so I went and did that as I came back into town and ran a bunch of errands.
Yeah, Justin's
And
video was a monarch video, and his plan, he just made a mahogany monarch pied, and his goal is to do the Oreo monarch pied to just get all that like
yeah, I
purplish.
remember for a while on Morph Market, he had a mahogany breeder male that was het monarch for like, I don't know, maybe it was like $1,500. For a long time, it was like $1,400, and it might have even gone down a tiny bit more. And I wanted to get it, but I think it was like het pie too. I think, I don't know. I didn't end up getting it though, but it was a cool looking snake, and mahogany does some cool things when you combine it with other dark genes, and the sumas, the super mahoganies are pretty snakes. So
Yeah.
uh,
Okay, let's get to our page one of Morph Market auctions. I want to talk about the auctions a little bit. And
sure.
first, let's take a look at this snake that I saw. And it's now ended. But the combination is simple, but the colors on this snake is crazy. It kind of looks monarchish, right? But this is a butter leopard enchi krypton. So you got these simple, incomplete dominant genes all mixed together along with krypton to make this beautiful snake. So I thought that would be really cool to share. Hopefully someone
Can you
got that.
show the other pictures?
Yeah.
Can you show the other pictures in the ad? It
He
looks
didn't
good
really
there.
stretch it out. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah, he's got some cool banding. Look at that head, the giant eye stripes. Pretty neat.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
thought it was fantastic.
yeah, I like
Almost made
that.
me want to bid on it, but I didn't. Well, I did win a snake this week, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll show you guys that on the Sunday video. But hold on. So what happened was it was a snake that had a pretty high reserve on it, and it seems that if people have that high reserve, it doesn't get much bidding. It kind of eliminates those $5 bidders from just chipping away until it sells for $150, which is good for the breeder because, sorry, they're testing the speaker system here.
Well, sometimes that can also just keep there from being a bid at all, and the snake just doesn't sell when it might have otherwise trickled, like climbed up there,
Mhm.
25 $25 at a time, and it would definitely sell, and people would keep bidding it. So it's a strategy that I don't really agree with. I think you should just put something no reserve, or just like super low, like essentially no reserve, and just see what happens. But sometimes people don't want to take that risk of it
Mhm.
just selling really cheap, and that is a possibility.
Yeah, so it was it's a $1,500 stake. I'll say the numbers. It was a 1,500 value, and the reserve was $500. I noticed that it ended at 5 in the morning, so I
Hmm.
decided I set my alarm like at a few minutes early, and I wanted to see if anybody bidded on it. I didn't want to get into a $5 bidding war, but
Hmm.
I told myself if it's still up there and no one bid, I'm going to put a bid on it and get it for $505. And sure enough, I won. I kind of felt sorry for the breeder. It's a name you and I are familiar with, and watch my video on Sunday if you want to see who it is.
Yeah.
And I got a great deal on a snake, a beautiful snake, and I'm sure with that's his reserve. It was his minimum he would take for it, and he frees his rack of a snake, and I get a beautiful snake.
Yeah, it is a pretty snake. It's got cool chocolatey flaming going on, and doing that cryptic like banding, like I think Billy calls it like towers.
Yeah,
And it's a neat snake, and you put him to other females that are, maybe like het cryptic, you'll pop out some cool combinations in the future.
I wanted to share another story about morph market auctions. So
Hmm.
the I've shared this story already. I put up two snakes, and the same person won both those snakes, and then
Hmm.
they told me, "Hey, we're getting married, and my husband bid on one, and I bid on the other. I just wanted this one," and it went back and forth, and then it was like they said, "Oh, we'll pay you after the wedding." So I gave them the week till their wedding. Then after that, it was like, "Sorry, I didn't get as much money as I expected during the wedding. Can we wait till payday?" And then I said, "Sure." And then payday came. I said, "Hey, you still want this snake?" And they said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't want it anymore." So I ended up losing $250 on two snakes that I could have sold. And at first, I was
Mm.
like, should I give a break to this person? They're new buyers and et cetera, et cetera. But I decided, you know what, I'm just going to report them to Morph Market because I don't want this experience to happen to any other sellers and have them get
Yeah.
the runaround again. So I did, and Morph Market agreed with me and are allowing me to put those snakes back up to bid. So that was pretty good of them.
Yeah. Yeah, there's I've heard some different stories of similar things where it's like couples bidding on multiple snakes, and it almost seems like a little bit red flaggish, like kind of scammy, like something's going on, because I've heard it from at least a couple people, if not like a few people, that similar types of things have happened where there's confusion with both people in a household bidding on multiple different snakes. So I don't know really what's
Yeah.
going on with that, but it seems like something is going on. But yeah, that's unfortunate that you had that as an auction experience, and it seems like you gave them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, here's somebody who's coming up with a story, at least giving a story that there's like, a wedding and the snake's a present. And so that can kind of pull at certain people's like,
Hmm.
uh, morals and ethics and their good nature to be patient. And the reality is, if like, you give someone a break and then you're patient with them on something that it's very clear cut, you have to pay in 24 hours, like, and they don't come through multiple times, and then they leave you hanging, like, the consequence of that, just like it would be for me or you bidding on a snake in an auction on Morph Market, would be to not be able to bid on a snake on an auction on Morph Market anymore. Or maybe after like a year they give you a chance or something, maybe like it's not indefinite, and you can like earn your trust back or something by being a good seller or enough time going by. I would think that that's something like that's possible, but yeah, that's it's not anything for you to feel bad about, other than the fact that you had some snakes sold and other people would have wanted to buy them, and now you've had to like waste your time and energy on it. So you put them back up there and see what happens and go from there and learning lesson.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to our subject of the week, which is feeding ball pythons. And
Hmm.
I've fed multiple preys, live, frozen. I'm sure you've done as well. Let's get into how we do
Hmm.
things and how we've heard people do things on feeding ball
Hmm.
pythons. Okay, let's talk first about type of prey. Mouse, mice, rat. I know in California the ASF is illegal, but there are people that feed ASF in California.
A
People
lot
talk
of
about,
people, a lot of
yeah,
people feed those. Because despite what Dave Kaufman might say, they are a natural diet for ball pythons in the wild, and that I've found that they seem to digest them better. And
that's what
some
I've heard.
people, like the next one is quail, right? Some people will say that quail will be really healthy for your snake to have a varied diet, but that the poops that come out are quite different and stinky after that.
That's what I've heard as well. I got a little hamster story I want to tell you before we talk about these other preys. But I used to frequent a local pet store, and I would buy my rodents from them. This was when I was my first collection, and so they got to know me a little bit. And one day I walk in to buy some rats for my snakes, and the lady told me, "Hey, you know what? We got these hamsters in, and we put a regular hamster with the dwarf hamsters, and the regular hamster just mauled all the dwarf hamsters. And they're still alive. We're wondering if you want to feed them to your snakes." So I was thinking, hey, you know, free food. I'll give it a try. So she brings out this box of snakes or I'm sorry, hamsters, and there's like guts hanging out of them. There's like eyes chewed off, and they're like still alive, you know. And like, oh my gosh, I felt so
Oh,
bad for these. And I actually did take them and bring them home to my snakes, and not all of the snakes would take those hamsters, but all of them definitely made a meal to my snakes that day. Have you fed any alternate items to your snakes besides the usual rodents?
yeah, I've fed well in the past with different reptiles. I've fed all sorts of different creatures to others. There's a lot of snake eating species, or there's a lot of like lizard eating species, and one of the things that I appreciate and respect about king snakes, for instance, so much is that they're called king snakes, just like a king cobra. They'll eat everything else. It's in the,
Yep.
like the prey pyramid for them, and including their own species. And um, so, but with ball pythons, I've fed gerbils and hamsters and rats and mice and soft furs. There's some people that breed gerbils and will like they have smaller litters, but they swear that they're like a really hardy species and that they digest pretty well. And in the olden days, when you would get tons of wild caught and imported ball pythons and other species of pythons and boas, and they were being really picky eaters, if you could get a hold of a gerbil and feed it to that snake, that python or that boa, you had a higher likelihood of them eating because they just really like to eat gerbils
Mhm.
a lot. And I've used that in the way of, since those are less common, like hamsters. So sometimes, as I got back in the hobby, I would feed like Russian dwarf hamsters that were hand raised, and sometimes I would splurge and go and get like a teddy bear hamster or some other variety of hamster at a pet store. And I'd try to get a deal on it. But I think one time I paid like 15 bucks for a meal for a snake just to get it to eat. And some people try baby chicks, but that's not something I remember ever doing, even in the past. But I've heard from a lot of people that do that, and you can get those at like feed stores and different things like that, and farm places, and um, that is going to be a nutritious meal. And I think the more varied the diet, the better. But I have not done that. And quail you can get from different places now, like reliably. There's producers of quail, and you can buy frozen bags of quail. And some people just like swear by it. They're just really enjoying it. And sometimes for ball pythons, and sometimes for other species of snake. And um, I have the opportunity to do that, but I just find that rats and mice work best, yeah, for my feeding. And sometimes there's like times where I'll use a lot of Russian dwarf hamsters. They seem to work really good. If you have a ball python that's picky, it's at 1,000 gram wall, something's going on. You just can't get it to eat. It's bored of what you're feeding it. Maybe it doesn't want frozen thawed. You put in a Russian dwarf hamster, ideally one that's been like hand raised and is really tame, and like it's more likely to eat it than anything else that you give it. That's been my experience. I'll also share real quick this about hamsters. Like I've held rattlesnakes, anacondas, like different crazy monitors, mildly venomous like creatures, rear fanged snakes, like all sorts of stuff in my life, and been pretty brave about it. And but hamsters, of all species of creatures that live on this planet that I encounter, scare me more than anything else. And I used to work at pet stores when I was much younger, and there would be hamsters there, and I just like would avoid trying to like deal with selling any kind of hamsters. I mostly like just did all the reptile stuff. But like there's like so many 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 year olds in this country that have raised little hamsters in the little tubes and their little like setups and stuff, and they have zero fear of their hamsters. And some of them have never been bitten by their hamsters, or they just don't even care because it's like whatever. And I've had so many hamster attacks on me in my life that it's like I got a complex over it. And only the nicest and friendliest of hand raised, super ultra reliably tame hamsters can I like cup and like hold and be like okay with. They're just like I have like a healthy fear and respect for the ferocity of hamsters. And so yeah, I mean I a long time ago I bred Russian dwarf hamsters, and the females of that species especially are just they're just like little Hannibal Lecters. They're crazy. They're little serial killers. They'll eat all their babies if anything's not right. They'll kill their mate, and like yeah, they're I have a funny relationship with hamsters, and I never feel bad feeding them.
Let's bring up a little touchy subject on feeders here. Now, ball pythons as feeders, because there are several snakes that and other animals that would eat ball pythons. And we know that breeders do it, but they don't really mention it because some people breed or produce an incredible amount of ball pythons, tons of normals out there that won't sell. What are your thoughts on using ball pythons as feeders?
I think like I think it's tough because there's lots of different reptiles, lizards and snakes, like over the years where um, I've had to feed something that was a little bit controversial, or I at least will say like I chose to for a variety of reasons that some seemed more ethical and some were just personal benefit. But like there's a lot of reptiles that people have a charm for. Everybody views animals in different like segments and categories. Some people in America, there's so many hundreds of millions of dogs and cats. in America, there's a whole pet trade and industry, and billions of dollars every year are spent on medical and on food and on like for people's pets. And everybody looks at things in different ways. Like some people, their dog or their cat or plural are like they're like a family member. And if you ran over their dog or you hurt their dog or their cat, like it would be like you punch their grandma. And so I appreciate those animals. And certain reptiles like people view in a similarly bonded way, where that is essentially their cat or their dog. That some people don't view it that way. Some people, some communities go on like rattlesnake roundups,
Hmm.
and some people don't agree with that, and some people will, like you can go to certain like butcher shops, like specialty places, and get like rattlesnake, turtle. The last one I was at had camel and turtle, and um some different like rare meats. Like alligator is farmed in Alabama and shipped out through the country for consumption by humans. And um, I feel like, if at the very least, I don't feel it's controversial if you have offspring, and this relates to like ball pythons, like or king snakes or whatever people work with, corn snakes, whatnot. But with ball pythons, that is a species of snake that I've always had a respect and an affinity and an appreciation for, since the 90s. Like if something is wrong with a baby that you hatch, and it's not gonna live a normal full life, like it's gonna suffer to some degree. Like I have zero issue with somebody making use of that and feeding it either to something that they have in their collection that can utilize it and get sustenance from, or giving it to a friend that they know is going to do that. And I don't have any problem with that. I think that's like essentially humane. But to purposely like breed and create life of a ball python just solely to use it to feed other reptiles, that starts to get a little bit gray, a little bit touchy, a little bit controversial. And I still, like, I have respect for the people that I have heard on Facebook or Instagram or on YouTube, like, or on podcasts, and they're saying like, yeah, there's a certain amount, but there's no way that I can sell them. The market's oversaturated right now. I keep king snakes, or my friend keeps venomous reptiles, or he has monitor lizards, or this or this or that. And I have zero qualms about feeding off excess byproduct animals that I can't find homes for, that this way at least it's a meal, and it's a costly meal when you really look at it. Like people don't really want to go through all the work to create a baby ball python just to feed it off. But the reality is, in this like saturated market where more ball pythons have been produced than ever before in our country, like something's got to happen with some of these snakes that have the ability to live 30, 40, 50 years. So, like, I can see where, if there was somebody who kept like king snakes or indigo snakes or venomous reptiles that eat snakes, or like it sounds a lot harsher to like feed a ball python to a vicious like sharp tooth like monitor lizard. But any which way, it's gonna you feed something, it's gonna go. So yeah, I could see where people would do that. And um I have mixed feelings in that area of it. But yeah, I think that an animal should be fed. And I think if you have an excess of something and you can't take care of it really, then it's better for it to go into making something else live longer than to just go into the freezer or into your backyard. Um, but then
Also,
that brings up the whole point of like responsible breeding too, you know.
right. Okay, before we move on to the next subject,
Yeah, I
any
mean, look, I mean, look, Mark, like, look, like in our country, we consume a lot of meat. Some people are like just almost like on a keto diet and are just like straight up T-Rex carnivores, you know, and
Mhm.
hit the gym a lot or whatever. And like, chickens are cute, ducks are cute. They're, you know, they're practically on this list, like chicks, quail, like, you know, like we as humans in America, we have fast food, we go to the grocery store, there's farms, like animals are produced regularly that some people have like a heartfelt attachment to and don't really want to they don't really want to think about, hey, what's in my McDonald's burger, you know, like what goes into that, what's the process. Oh, like, yeah, a cow gets killed in front of other cows and slaughtered and processed and turned into a burger with whatever other ingredients that clown Ronald puts into it, and you know, and you eat that. That's a life, that's a living creature. If we go to India, they're not gonna kill cows, you know, they're sacred to them. And every culture and every country and every community has like their own viewpoint on that. But every single day in America, cows, ducks, pigs, like chickens, like are being created and slaughtered for our consumption as humans. So there's really a grand scope to the circle of life and survival of the fittest. And you know, that's why I don't just automatically say, "Oh no, never do that." There's there's times where I'm totally fine with it, and other times where it's kind of like, "Really? Did you really need to do that? You could just breed rats instead." You know, it's kind of an individual situation as far as like it being controversial to me. How do you feel on it?
yeah, I went vegan for a few months a couple of years ago, and I got into all the ethics of eating animals and stuff. Um, I eat meat still, not as heavily as I used to because after going vegan, you kind of get used to eating less meat.
Mhm.
But with ball pythons, I have no problem and of using them as a food source for other animals, healthy or otherwise. And I know it's probably not something nice to say, but I personally have not done that or don't plan to do that. I do want to get a king snake to consume some of the. I've only produced maybe like two or three babies so far that were not viable, but it would be
Mhm.
nice to have something be able to use that. I've
Yeah.
for my overproduction, I've got a lot of kids who responsible kids, of course, that I could just give them away to, and that's what I've been doing with my clutches. But I don't have a problem if people want to feed like normal double hets or whatever that wouldn't sell. That's it's fine with me. I see it as rats are super cute and maybe are at a higher order than a snake, and yet we have no qualms about feeding rats to our snakes. But why not
Yeah.
snakes to other animals that need it?
Yeah, I mean, every day, Mark, I go to work and chop up animal parts for people to consume for dinner, and I find them a good deal, and I enjoy it. It doesn't gross me out at all. I'm used to it. It's totally fine, and people continue to eat meat, and some people don't, and that's totally their choice and fine. You know, some of the meats nowadays, it's better not to eat too much meat. But the older I've gotten, I've appreciated eggs more. So like having eggs in the morning, I'm picky about them, but like, yeah, certain animals will eat other animals. Like in the insect world, you got praying mantises, and you have like a clutch of baby spiders. Like you have an egg sac that hatches. Like a lot of those babies eat each other. And when I used to breed tarantulas, some of them will have like 2,000 babies. Like I would keep them in little deli cups in little groups and let them kind of pick each other off over time and let the strongest survive. And that gave them a jump start into life so that then I didn't have 2,000 tarantulas. I would just have, like 500 or whatever. And, and then with like breeding tarantulas, for example, like the females a lot of times will eat the males or they'll try to. And the males have developed certain like evolutionary tools and like to defend themselves. And it's pretty interesting. But they usually get eaten eventually because they get weak, they get tired, and the female overpowers them, and she gets hungrier because she knows she's going to have babies eventually. And there were times where I would like see that happen and just be like, all right, well, that's the end of that. And then there were even a couple of times where I like almost like essentially I made sure that this one female that I wanted to breed so bad that maybe she wasn't eating much lately and maybe the male was like I wasn't going to use him anymore and I made sure that she ate him and that in the spider world gives them like a little bit extra energy to then create more offspring rather than not having eaten a male and maybe being a picky eater and then maybe not laying an egg sac or not laying a very good one or not laying a very big one. So yeah, that's everybody's going to have their own take on it and some people are going to be sensitive to it and some people aren't. I mean, there's some countries you could go to in America. We love dogs and cats so much. There's some countries you go to and they eat dogs and they eat cats. So,
Mhm.
it's just to each their own and their viewpoint and it is a little bit controversial, but it's all the circle of life, and that has to be factored into it as well.
Now I know you're making the transition from live to frozen thawed. Is that still occurring with you?
Yeah, I've been trying to do that. However, this week I just went back to live and I picked some up this morning and I was gonna like feed right away
Hmm.
and and sometimes I'll see little baby rats and I just want to save them. There have been certain ones that I've saved. Like the first time I ever got Norwegians to breed, and I got a batch of them, and I got some females and like a couple of males, and I did get babies eventually, although I didn't find myself to be a very successful breeder of rats. Maybe if I stuck with it and did it in larger scale, I think I'd get it down, but I did save one baby that was like apricot and white, and she had this cool stripe, and we called her apricot. And we saved her the whole time, and I had saved another like gray one. It was just a really pretty gray, and eventually the other rats killed it as it got
Hmm.
bigger. And that was sad. But we saved apricot, and she eventually like I don't know, it was like a few weeks ago, finally had 6 babies and I let her raise them, and then they went to feed my first clutch. And yeah, so I got I don't know 50 plus rats today. That was $100. I
That's a good
got
deal.
like tw yeah 20 weans, 20 20 like babies, and then like 10 smalls. And they're in a bigger box right over there. And I just haven't fed them off yet because I went into extreme clean mode today, like Mr. Clean. and decided to wait until after that to feed. Although sometimes that'll kind of disturb a snake, and you almost want to feed them like the next day after they've had water and slept
Mhm.
and chilled. And but I will feed them all in like maybe like an hour after the podcast. I have 5 more tubs, 70 tubs to clean in the Freedom Breeder, and then do a little bit more rearranging of snakes. And then I will start to feed those snakes. And then I will move on to all the PVC stuff, which will be a little quicker. And I have some brand new tubs. And we'll start to feed those. And then I will clean all the babies, like in the sea serpents rack. I think there's like 18 spots. And I will feed all of them. I think by the time I get to the sea serpents rack, they'll all get cypress mulch. So I have like a bag and a half of cypress. So I probably have like 40 quarts of like cypress, maybe a little bit less. And then I'll just stick them all on that. And then reassess water bowls and different things and switch some different ones out. I really like Pyrex a lot. And I have some ceramic bowls and different stuff. And I'll um, I'll feed all of them whatever's left. And I have a pixie frog, which is a giant African bullfrog. It's not super huge. I've been raising it for a little bit. And then I have an Argentine horn frog and a big adult male. He's like, I don't know, like that big. And he'll eat pretty much any prey item within reasonable size. Like he'll even eat like a really small rat if you let him. You really shouldn't like feed amphibians, rodents too often. And when you do, you shouldn't feed them rodents that have like a whole lot of hair because they can't digest the hair. But he's eaten like pretty good size soft furs and pretty good size adult mice and almost like small size rats, almost pretty much. Yeah, so it's good to have that garbage disposal. And um, I have a king snake and I have a couple sand boas that, could eat stuff like that. But yeah, I'll have feeding time later, and I expect it to go pretty well. Although I was surprised by the recent weeks when I used thawed rodents, how well many of them had eaten. I didn't expect that. I thought it was gonna be painstaking because there's been times in years past where I fed thawed items and then they just like go to waste. And
Mhm.
that becomes money, and it also becomes the waste of an item. Like I hate when I'm working in the grocery store and I have to throw away any meat. Like I do subtle little things to find ways to limit what it is that I have to shrink at work. And it's a shame when an animal was specifically raised and then doesn't get utilized. It's a waste of resources and energy and life. So yeah.
I want to talk a
So
little bit how
live this week. Yeah, just live.
I want to talk about how we prepare frozen thawed rodents. I'll share my method and then
Mm,
you could share yours. But I really prefer feeding frozen thawed. Um, I know
mhm,
live provides that certain amount of interaction for the snakes, but I don't like dealing with
mhm,
live. I've had one too many rat jump out of the tub, and I gotta like crawl on my hands and knees to try to
mm,
catch them. So I just prefer feeding frozen. And how I do it is I don't like. I know some people stick it in warm water and feed that. I don't like messing around with wet frozen thawed rodents. So I have this incubator that I took from school, and the incubator it just basically warms it up and keeps it dry. What I'll do is before I leave for work, I'll put the frozen rodents out and in that incubator, but not turn it on. And then by the time I get home, they'll be completely thawed. And I just turn that button on, and in about an hour, they're like the perfect temperature, and you get this perfectly warm, limp, frozen thawed rodent that my steaks just immediately grab. So I don't have to deal with any of the dripping water or anything like that. So that's how I do my frozen thawed. How do you do yours?
Yeah, that's one method. A lot of people have their own little subtle takes and twists on it. Um, I've always been the have frozen rodents in Ziploc bags or vacuum sealed, and then stick that in essentially hot water or very, very, very warm water, and just let them like soak in a sense in that, almost like a sous vide. That seems to be a newer thing for people cooking in recent years. And a sous vide is like you got a vacuum sealed steak, and then you heat it up with water, but it just never really like overcooks, even though it's this really high temperature, like 165 or whatever. And I still haven't wrapped my brain all the way around how that works, and without overcooking it. But people swear, some people swear by it, and I essentially do the same thing. Sometimes, if it's a large amount of them, they're like cooling the water down that they're in, the source of like heat, and then I'll dump everything, and then I'll put more hot water or super warm water, and then everything just like thaws out, and then I'm usually able to minimize like wetness to that. And then there's other times where I just get a bucket of hot water and I just dump them all in like apples, and then I just pull them. And some people like get their snakes used to taking wet prey items, wet, dripping, thawed out, somewhat warm rodents. And some snakes and some lizards don't really care for that. And some people will then like get like a hair dryer, was like the old way a lot of people would do, and just and just get it like all dried off and fluffy, like it's got Vidal Sassoon hair. And then take some hemostats and feed everything. And that works for some people. In the past, I have done that, but when recently, when I've been feeding frozen thawed, I just have been doing the Ziploc bag, and then I have some vacuum sealed frozen softers and different things. I even did a teddy bear hamster a couple weeks ago, and then I just pull them out, and there'd be a couple things that would maybe be a little bit wet, but it essentially would just be moist and warm, and take them. So I was pleasantly surprised, and I think in the future I would like to do more frozen thawed and have more on hand. And then I can just get a small amount of live. Like I got a good price on these, but there'll be times where I need to be prepared to just thaw out like 50 rodents to feed when I come here on Fridays. So um yeah, I have not had as much like success ratio wise of getting animals to eat frozen thawed in the past. You almost have to like train your snakes to do it, and there's a way that you can go about getting them to take it a little bit easier through patience. And there's times where I had chameleons in the past, and I bred chameleons, and some of them are real shy. And sometimes you get a new chameleon and it's like scared of you, and you have to like hold that cricket or that like wax worm for like the longest time. And then there's been times where I've like spent an hour trying to get a variety of different creatures to eat. So there's a certain amount of patience involved. And I think that that's a little bit of what went on when I fed. I didn't just take like a frozen thawed rodent and then just like plop it like on a paper towel in their cage and then come back. Like I'll
Yeah.
like hold it in front of them and wiggle it and do different things. And some of them that didn't eat, I could tell they would in the future.
Hmm.
Um, but ever since, and I've mentioned this before, my feelings on it with feeding like live prey is way back in the pet boom of the late 90s when I first got a little baby king snake and I started collecting more king snakes and then rosy boas and milk snakes and other things that I had. I just enjoy that like circle of life, that like nature channel, like the cheetah like racing to like tackle the antelope, or whatnot. Like I have always found that king snakes in particular are just really ferocious eaters, and I enjoy watching that in my own little nature channel in my room. And there's a lot of people that don't want to show those kinds of things on like say YouTube or Instagram, and people get shamed a little bit for feeding live. But like in reality, in the privacy of your own home and your own animal care and husbandry, like feeding live is always going to be the most successful and the healthiest stimulation wise for your animals to live closer to like what they are in the wild. And some people, you can avoid all of that. You can also avoid your lizard or your snake getting bitten. So real quick, Mark, I'll bring up, we're talking about feeding prey items to ball pythons now twice now in 2 years, twice in the last like I don't know, 8 months or something like that. I've had snakes bitten up by rodents. So the first one was I had this pastel ultra male female. She's just like a big tank. She's super huge and like chunky, and she's just strong. And that was in that collection that I acquired. And she's a nice looking snake. And one night, after lots of pairings and stuff, one week I had like an extra soft fur, and I put that in her tub and closed the tub and went to bed. And I came back like a day and a half later and checked, like a morning had passed, and then like the next morning came in and I went in there and checked. Oh, let me check everything, change some waters, do some stuff, and everybody ate. Oh, that's good. And I opened her tub and she was just all chewed up. She like a little bit on her side, but
Yeah.
basically mostly on her back. And I could tell on her nose a little bit, although it wasn't very bad. I could tell that this rodent had like attacked her over and over and over, and she was like real defensive and back and like, and then not usually like a rodent will just like nip and take like little bloody marks, just like sometimes it's not that bad, but you can tell something's there. It almost looks like a rash. And then other times you'll see these horror stories and people share it on YouTube, or like half of a snake's face is bitten off, or like there's just big old holes, or you can see the spine, or like I've seen all sorts of things over the years. And you can find all sorts of that gruesome stuff on YouTube, and people will warn you about feeding live. And there is always a survival of the fittest between two creatures, prey and and monster ball python, and and usually a snake that doesn't want to eat, whether it's a king snake or a rosy boa or a corn snake or a ball python or a carpet or whatever it is, it usually will kill that rodent and then just not eat it. But every once in a while, they just don't want nothing. They just feel real passive and real just like non-confrontational, and just don't think that they're gonna get bitten. And even if they do get bitten, some snakes will then attack. But then like some snakes, sometimes they get into this mood where they just don't want to have nothing to do with fighting at all, and they just like do their ball python curl up thing. And
Mhm.
if they get attacked, they get attacked, or they get chewed on, they get chewed on, and maybe they thrash around a little bit, but they don't fight like a pacifist. And This snake had like a quarter size, almost silver dollar size, but maybe not quite. I don't think you could have fit a silver dollar in it, but it definitely was like bigger than a quarter size of just like a circle of just completely missing scales.
Oh
And
my
then all
gosh.
sorts of other little bites and things, but they weren't really that bad. They're all gonna go away. They're all gonna heal. Nothing damaging. But they had this one missing chunk. Like it just let this soft bird just like go to town and have dinner. And I luckily didn't go through like a fatty, like it just went through fat, like scales and fat, and then like you could see it didn't get into muscle. It just stayed right, just paper thin, just like right on top of muscle. So I didn't get into anything real damaging, but I felt so bad. And I almost like I had like a feeling. I almost had like a feeling that something could have gone wrong, and that I shouldn't leave that rodent in there. And any other time that I've done that, like usually the rodent's still in there, but there's been no bites, or the rodent's dead, but they didn't eat it, or nothing tragic has happened. And um, you'll hear stories from the past of people saying like one bite alone from a dirty rat could like kill a king snake or a boa or a python or something just from a bacterial infection. And in theory, that's true and it has happened, but in general, like ball pythons are a very hardy species and can put up with a lot. And but nonetheless, I felt horrible. I felt like, the perfectionism of I made a mistake. And then also that this snake is never going to be perfect looking again.
Yeah.
And, and it was a learning lesson. And what I did, there's different antibiotic type things you can get, creams, shots, different stuff. At that time, when that happened, what I chose to do was take her out, clean the cage all the way, completely sanitize it. I like chlorhexidine, and first I like soaped it, Dawn soap and everything, hot water, and then I chlorhexidine and I wiped it down really good, and then I put like some sort of paper. I had like those paper inserts. Like I put like this paper down, and then I gave her a brand new like Pyrex bowl. Everything was just like super sterile, like hospital room, tattoo room, like sterile. And then I took her and I gave her a bath, like a lukewarm water bath, and I just kind of like gently just like bathed her and like just to test like how much anything hurts, and just to like check for wounds, just check everything, and to get like any bacteria that had grown over a very short amount of time, but just to like boom, just do that. And I think I even put hydrogen peroxide right there on that circle wound, and then washed it off again a little bit. And then I took something that is like it's kind of looks like Vaseline, and it's called bag balm, and they use it for like horses when horses get sores and stuff like that. And I bag balmed like anywhere that there was like any sort of like abrasion or anything, and then right on the wound too, and a nice like thick coating. And then I put her in the cage, and she had like the clean water, and I just left her like that sterile for I think it took her about like maybe like 6 weeks to heal and shed. And when she finally did go through the shedding process, that took like about a week. And then I opened the tub one day and she had shed. That like circle wound was just like gone. And there's like essentially like protective scales. And then there's like a little scab that's like the size of like a pea, but it's kind of like an oval shape. It's just like a scab. And all the rest of her was like essentially healed. Her nose, her face, her like nose that just got lightly like bit up, but not like red. Like is like lighter now, but like no worse for wear really. But I can tell someone else wouldn't be able to tell, but I can tell that it's like she's a little bit lighter there. And then I think she shed last week, so for the second time. And that scab kind of is still sort of there, but essentially like she's totally fine. So in 6 weeks, she was healed of like worry and issues with like protective tissue and scales. And I
That's
think
good.
over time, eventually, she'll heal up even more, where it's just like a spot. But then recently, I only have one clown ball python, and I paid $1,600 for this clown ball python back in the height of me entering the hobby the first summer, and like everything was skyrocket prices, and I made a payment plan, and I just had to have this one snake, and she's really pretty. She's given me a lot of feeding issues over time, but then last year she did really well and bulked up, and I paired her, but nothing has come from that. And I had put a mouse in with her, a brown mouse that somebody had an oversupply of, and I fed all these brown mouse, mostly brown mice to all these snakes. And mice, as you know from rodents like escaping on you, when you go to feed them and stuff, like mice are the worst. Mice are worse than any other like hamster, soft fur, rat, like it doesn't matter. Like they are so quick and they tend to be a little bit flighty and bitey, and not usually are they like easy to catch. My hardest like adventures of having to like move everything in the room and corner something and block stuff off is it's always mice. And I'd put a mouse in with her and left it overnight. And then I came back like a couple days later and it was dead in her water bowl. And she was
Oof.
all bitten up too. Not like a big wound or anything, but like a rash all like along her back where it just like
Mhm.
nibbled on her. And I was like, I can't believe I let this happen again. But Mark, these are some of the like things that can happen with feeding live compared to feeding, frozen thawed. It's not going to happen with frozen thawed. And that'll be one of the big, pluses that people will mention. Well, hey, my snake's not going to get attacked. And it like in this whole 2 years back in the hobby, those are the only two instances where I've had anything like that happen. Even if I don't always just like drop a rodent in with a snake and close the tub and come back in 2 days, but anytime I've ever dropped one in, like even at the very least, like maybe on a rare instance, the rodent's still alive on the corner, quivering from the snake, and the snake doesn't want to eat it. And I haven't had any issues. And every once in a while, you'll feed a live prey item to a ball python or any snake, and you'll see it like try to like bite it, and sometimes they'll get a little nibble on a snake, but essentially ball pythons are tough and coil and constrict well, and it doesn't last long, and it's usually doesn't even leave a mark or anything. But that is something to factor in with the whole what do you feed, frozen thawed or live.
Before we close this out, let me share a detriment to feeding frozen thawed with my method. And just don't fall asleep while you're warming up those rats in my little incubator, because I remember I just pulled one out and it was like a balloon, and as soon as I touch it, I got like splattered with guts in my face. And
Oh man.
surprisingly, my snake still ate them all, but I had to deal with every little squeeze caused like this little explosion. And so there's
Mm.
advantages to both frozen, thawed, and live, and everyone has their own method of doing things. And we just thought we'd share how we do it. Any last words
Yeah.
before we close out here?
um no, not really, just other than just make the choice that works best for you, as a keeper of the reptile that you have. And some people will think that frozen thawed's a lot safer. I know my cousin did, and then she started just feeding frozen thawed, and she found a lot of messy instances where she thawed stuff out and the snake bit it and it would just like rip open and it would just be this big giant mess, and it grossed her out so much that she switched to live and never went back, and then started breeding rodents. And that's so funny because she was at the opposite end of that spectrum before those gory instances. And you'll figure out what works for you. But just like when I go fishing and I do something slightly controversial to the state of California, when I go fishing for largemouth bass, I will take a worm and put it on a little hook on a little pole, and I'll catch like little sunfish and bluegills, and like I'll put them in a bucket with water. And then I'll take a bigger hook and a bigger pole, and I'll hook those fish, which is technically like it's like a game fish, and you're not supposed to do it this way in California. Maybe some states you can, but in general, it's like a frowned upon thing, and a ranger would not be happy with you with it. Although you can take certain bluegill, catch them, and take a certain amount of them home and eat them. But like, anyways, I'll like throw the bluegill out there. With this is what my body taught me way back in the day. I throw the bluegill out there on a hook and a bobber, and it'll just like go bobbing around, and the fish will take it different places. Sometimes if it's strong enough, they'll take it down a little bit. And then the point of that is that largemouth bass prefer something that's moving and alive. And if you're using lures, the whole idea of lures is for them to act like the physics of a injured snake in the water. There's like rattles, there's sounds, there's all these different flashy colors and little spinner like little like rudders, little turret, like little propeller things on the back. All sorts of different things have been used over the decades in our country. But what works best, I've spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on different like lures and stuff over the years, and I've hardly ever caught any fish with them ever. Some creatures just want live, and that is sort of relative to feeding reptiles in the wild. If you have a bearded dragon and you give it a whole bowl full of dead crickets, maybe you can get one to train it. Like you could put some little leaves of lettuce or some fruit and mix it in there, and maybe it will eat some of it. You can even train some geckos to like just lick calcium or various vitamins right out of a little dish, even if they're not like an especially like nectar like driven species like a day gecko or a crested gecko or something. But like live prey works best. And that I will say that, and I will say thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will catch you next Friday where we'll have a slightly less controversial topic, most likely.
Thank you so much, Jason, for sharing your
Mhm.
wealth of knowledge about this
Sure.
industry. Thank
Hmm.
you, audience, for checking in. Have a great week, everybody. Take care and be safe.
See ya.